Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 33rd edition of Stately Office Hours. This is where us, the team at Stately, talk to you about what we've been working on at Stately and on XState. We answer your questions, we love to get your feedback, and we talk about our general discussion points of the week. So starting us off, let's do our team intros. Nearly forgot that. Very important that you know who we are. So I'll start off. I'm Laura, and I do designer and developer advocacy and quite a lot of other things at Stately. David?
Yep, we all wear many hats here. I'm David, the creator of XState, founder of Stately, and juggler of hats.
And Matthias, or Anderist, as he's more commonly known.
Hi, I'm Matthias. I'm a software engineer at Stately, and I'm a resident of 7th Circle of Hell, that is TypeScript.
Oh no, you're only wearing one hat. It's a really big hat and it's enveloped the entirety of you. That is TypeScript. So if you like the Stately team, you might want to join us. David, do you want to give us a little update about our hiring status?
Sure, yeah. So we're still going through resumes, talking to people, and that's just still an ongoing process. If you did submit your resume and didn't hear from us yet, we still have a lot to go through, and we're still contacting people. There's just so many people we could talk to each week, but I really, really encourage you to apply still. Just a reminder, we're looking for product designers, developers, and developer advocates. So please apply. There's a link down there at the bottom, and it will also be copy pasted to the show notes.
Yes, I will make sure that the link is there because this is a really long one and we still haven't got a short URL sorted out. And so if you just follow that, you'll get to a lovely page all about careers at Stately. Now, let's have a chat about what we've been working on this week. I think a lot of it is a similar status to last week, and I will include a link to our chat about our current work in the chapter links below. What else have we been working on, team?
Well, we've been doing a lot of open source work, actually. Mathieusz and I are working very much towards version 5 and releasing an alpha. We have some big, giant PRs that we're still going through. And, even related to the question this week, we are working on simplifying, or at least making more explicit, like the notion of actors and how they work in version 5. So we'll be talking about that a little bit more, but yeah, that just goes to say there's a lot of big updates in version 5 that we're currently working on.
Matthias, do you want to tell anyone more about your TypeScript hell?
Just exploring how to effectively use it for our use cases and how to trick it, even diving into like TypeScript compiler to see like why our use cases fail. So just that. A part of that, I was also working on reviving that XState stop PR that is supposed to like fix a couple of bugs that were reported notoriously by people. So the idea is that whenever you stop a machine, it should receive a special event, XState stop, and like all of your exit handlers should now, after that PR gets merged in, should be executed like reliably without runtime errors with that event, and everything should just work there. And I'm also working on one of big refactor for V4, or at least trying to give it a go. We'll see how it goes for reliable event arguments, which is a little bit scary, but it's essentially an opt-in flag to change the behavior of the interpretation a little bit of like machines, and just to make sure that it matches closer the expectations about it. That should also like make the type gen fully correct, I would say. So we should be able to take out the like experimental banner from it, which would be nice.
We're not going to spring any of these scary changes on. As you can tell, Matthias is very cautious about what actually gets added in and what's behind a flag, and we're not going to be making breaking changes to people's work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, next up, I wanted to, sorry, just extending my window a little bit so that I can, first of all, forgot to say, if you want to ask us any questions or give us any feedback right now, you're always welcome to join our Discord at discord.gg/xstate. There we have a dedicated office hours channel. So I've got an eye on that right here. And we're there throughout the week as well if you have any questions that you want us specifically to answer during our office hours. You can also tweet us at StatelyII, or you can leave us a nice comment. And we've already got friends here in the YouTube comments. And John says he came in just in time to hear typegen fully correct. Fully operational.
Star Wars joke.
So what we asked everyone this week is, what did you find most challenging about learning XState? Now, we asked a similar question to this way back in September when Stately was still very young, and we were getting an idea about how to particularly improve the documentation and also make the learning curve for XState less steep. And we thought, given that we've got a much bigger audience now, there's a lot more of you around, that we wanted to get more recent opinions and feedback, because if you've been at our previous office hours, you'll know that Matt and I are working on reworking the docs to make them hopefully really easy for you to understand and for you to get started with XState and with our Stately tools. And so hopefully we'll use these responses in order to do that. So first up, folks are saying that they struggle to know just where to start with XState. Is this a common problem that you hear about, David?
Yeah, and in fact, there's a lot of layers to this problem, because knowing where to start, there's actually many different starting points, from like, where do I learn about state machines and state charts, to even going back and saying, why should I use them? And even going further back and saying, like, what's the original problem that I need to solve in order to realize, okay, state machines and state charts solve that problem. And it's funny because there's really no like clear path, at least not right now. And that's, of course, what we're hoping to change in the documentation and our teaching materials. But like the main reason like that we push for state machines and state charts and these visual formalisms is that we want you to ship more software with fewer bugs in less time. So I guess just all of those things. And so the way that you really do that is by just structuring your logic in a clean visual way. And that's where state machines and state charts really shine, because that is also like a shared language between developers, designers, and dev advocates. And so just, I don't know, once you get the idea that, hey, there's this thing called state machines and state charts, right now, like there's some, information, especially Laura's, awesome introduction to state machines and state charts, where you could actually learn about them. But we do need to make that more prominent and help people like just go from step A to step B and understand, okay, I have to learn about this, and here's how I directly apply it to my applications.
That actually makes me think of another thing that a lot of people mentioned, which was they struggled to know how to complete common tasks with XState. A lot of the time it was trying to translate what they're working on into those state chart concepts.
Yeah, and so I think with this one too, it's important to realize that XState is just a library that helps you create state machines and state charts. And really, you could do this in many different ways. Like you could even structure these tasks and the various logic that you're trying to represent with a whiteboard. So you take a marker, you draw your boxes, you draw your arrows, you understand the flow charts, user flows, state machines, state charts, whatever you want to call it, and just have a nice organized way of, displaying that information. And then that actually translates pretty well to XState. So I wouldn't say like you should try to think of like, oh, how do I, shoehorn this into XState, but more, how do I model this as a state machine, or at least in some organized events-driven way? And how can XState help me do that? And of course, you don't need to use XState. You could use anything else. Like people have been making state machines with, just the language features, for, dozens of years. But yeah, so I would like rephrase this question, which hopefully would help people out.
Yeah, and a lot of it is that there are many different ways you could use XState and many different ways that you could structure your application logic. There are, of course, best practices, but there's often not one way you can do it. There's lots of different ways you could do it.
Right.
And which brings me to another, when we're getting into modeling, thing that people said that they struggled with was general concepts of things like spawning actors, child machines and spawning child machines, and general communication between the lot of them.
Yeah, so I would say that part of this is on us because XState version 4 actually didn't have, or at least I don't remember it having actors at the very beginning. That was something that was added onto the library. So it was sort of an afterthought that just grew after a while. But in version 5, it's going to be a first-class citizen. And yeah, they're like learning about like how state machines are useful and how they work it sometimes feels like a different topic than learning about the actor model and how you could model different things as actors. I would say like the best way to distinguish between the two is that the state machine describes the behavior of a single entity, and the actor model describes how these entities can talk to each other. And that actually becomes a lot more complex because you get into distributed systems. But again, it's a way of organizing your logic so that you don't just have random event handlers calling each other and callbacks and functions, but now you have a structured way of thinking. These are different parts of my apps. Here's the protocol in which they communicate with each other. So part of this is on us. We have to improve the tooling on actually visualizing these actor systems and the communication between these actors, also known as sequence diagrams, and also education as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've been talking about a lot this week, terminology, being able to define the differences between what everything is. And hopefully as we're getting it clarified better for ourselves as well, we should be able to write much better documentation to help everyone else out with it too.
Right.
We also have, and I'm sorry to bring this up again, Matthias, TypeScript and typegen best practices. This is something that a lot of people do say is challenging when they get started with XState.
Yeah, so like I guess like some best practices are still in flux in a way, because when we were preparing that whole thing, like we couldn't possibly predict all of the ways that people are actually using XState. Like we could predict some, we probably missed some, but at the same time we just couldn't catch them all. They are not Pokemons. So so I would say that like the best way, if you struggle with something, just create a discussion on GitHub or an issue, and we can talk it through. My general advice would be to let us infer as much as possible. So like don't try to type for example, like a return type of a function that returns a machine. That might be very hard to do right now, or even at the verge of impossible in certain situations, especially if you have like generic functions wrapping that whole thing. But like I was helping a lot of people over those days and weeks lately with some troubles, and most of the things were typable. It just maybe wasn't that obvious from the beginning how to type it. There are also like some nice features coming in the next TypeScript version, mainly like instantiation expressions that help us a little bit. I've used them to solve some cases. So like it's it's a beta feature because it's only available in the next version of TypeScript, but hopefully a class of cases should become less problematic in the near-ish future, because that version of TypeScript is already in beta. So yeah, I don't know the release date, but it should be in a month or two. I don't know like what's their release schedule. But yeah, like let's talk it through on GitHub or on Discord. Just ping me, and we can always figure it out together in a way. And I'm trying to gather this information to kind of like create a guide of sorts of common problems at the end. But I'm still very much learning how to manage that complexity. right now. So yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing. I'd love to read that guide. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to have to keep pushing you on that now
Yeah,
until we have it.
Speaking of release notes, I'm making a soft promise here that just like the TypeScript release notes, we're going to try to have monthly, I guess you could call it release notes for our open source work, so that we could share with you all of the new features and bug fixes and things that we implemented.
Yeah, that is definitely something that is on the plan, and we will have the first one for you, I hope, at the beginning of May. So end of this month, beginning of next month.
Yep, we may have it. Sorry.
Terrible.
Yeah.
John said, my issues were too many ways to do a thing. What is a sensible scope for a single machine, and how do machines communicate with other machines? So that's very much what we were talking about before. And John does say, I think the first and last are solved with the new docs. He's hoping. And John also said, a short course on thinking with actors and sequence diagrams could help people get the most out of state machines. And that could be quite a fun idea. I think that might make a really good talk, actually, that we could share with everyone too, or a blog post.
Yeah, and additionally, we could add some tooling too. In the previous version of the inspector, I did have a little sequence diagram that you could pull up that shows like just how different machines and actors talk to each other. And this is very intuitive for people. There's this program called swimlanes.io, which allows you to create these sequence diagrams. So I think that, having that be auto-generated and having that be visible in the editor or visualizer would be very, very helpful.
Angelo says, my issue was using the new shiny XState and trying to both assemble furniture and paint the walls. Being aware of a right scope for tools like XState helped with the confusion a lot. I think that's probably a good part of introductory documentation, is actually explaining to people what XState is really useful for.
Yeah, I actually have two main thoughts on this. The first is like, yeah, to a lot of people, XState might seem like a hammer that you wield and everything looks like a nail, when you see a hammer. And of course, the advice is like, just because you have a hammer doesn't mean that you should try to use it for absolutely everything. But on the same hand, or on the other hand, it's sort of like developers are mainly in the business of carpentry, like trying to build a wooden house or something. And most of the time they don't even know a hammer exists. And they're just like, hey, I have glue. I could just put things together with glue. That's what I'm used to doing. And so we more want to show people like, hey, this hammer exists and it's really good for nails. And that's a lot of what you're going to be doing in a lot of the structure. So.
And sometimes if you build a house with glue, it's going to fall down a lot quicker than a house built with hammer and nails.
Exactly. I'm still tweaking that analogy. This analogy
it's a good analogy.
It's held together with glue, but I'm going to solidify it a bit more. And also another thing to realize too is that XState is a state orchestration library, which is a little different than a state machine library, because you could use it to manage states, but you could also use XState to tell other things what to do. Like that's one of the most powerful features of XState. So we've heard a lot in the community about people even using other state management libraries like Zustand or Redux and using it alongside XState, because XState tells like, hey, do this, update this, etc. And the other libraries can take care of, whatever specialized state management that they have. So you don't have to shove everything inside of XState. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies.
Yeah, and we're not trying to make everybody use XState. We're just trying to make you use XState if it will help you. And I think, oh yes, and the last one that people said the challenge they had with learning XState was rewriting their existing code base with XState or with statecharts concepts.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few strategies for this, and this really ought to be a blog post, but I would say, going back to the house building or house renovating analogy, don't try to like rip everything out and do it the new way. Start small, like start at a single component and then maybe do two components and grow from, I guess, the bottom up. And also you could use XState alongside your existing application code by writing model-based tests for it. So you would use XState to define how your application works, and then use something like XState test to actually generate all those tests. And then you could be sure that that model accurately describes how your application is supposed to behave. And then you could eventually just introduce XState to that application without fear. But XState isn't meant to be like a global state management solution where it needs to dominate absolutely everything. Again, you could use it alongside whatever you're using.
Fabulous. So speaking of using XState, we wanted to ask you, and we'll follow up on this next week, are you using XState in production? We're really keen to hear from you if you are, to hear about what kinds of things you're using XState for, what kinds of organizations you're working for. Anything else that you want to add to that, David?
Yeah, so in addition to this, just I asked this last year too, but if you are using XState in production, what kinds of tools and features besides the ones that we've already released would really make your life easier and would, really improve the effectiveness of your team collaborating on state management and application logic? Like, what are some dream features that you wish that you had?
Great. And we will ask that on our social media and in Discord next week, and we'll chat about it in a bit more depth in next week's office hours.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of next week, David, you'll be in Miami.
Yeah, so it's going to be me, Jenny, and Gavin. So 3 of us are going to be at React Miami. We're not speaking, we're not sponsoring. We are just sunbathing, I guess, or whatever you do in Miami. We will be there. So please come find us. We will have stickers and swag to hand out if you ask nicely. So, yeah.
Oh, it'll be fun for you to meet people. And maybe even get some suggestions for good talks and stuff to catch. There seems to be a lot of talks going on at React Miami.
Yeah, there's a lot of good talks. So very excited to network with everyone there.
Well, and the rest of us will live vicariously through you. So does anyone else have anything that they wanted to mention this week?
Nothing from me.
I think we've covered a lot in a short amount of time, which is exactly
Yeah.
what we like to do with office hours. So on that note, if you have any more questions that you want to ask us or any feedback you want to give us, you can find us on our Discord at discord.gg/xstate. You can find us at Stately AI on Twitter. I think you can find us, we're just Stately on LinkedIn if you're hanging about on there too. And we are Stately AI on YouTube, which you'll probably know if you are currently watching this on YouTube. Or you might be watching it on Twitter, so that wasn't such a daft thing to say. So please get in touch with us. We love to hear from you, and we will see you again next week.